All right. All right. Perfect. Okay. Hello. Hello.
Hello, Sierra.
I'm Sierra Paniwal Felicidad. This is my friend Gabriel Garcia, my elder. He doesn't like to be called that. He's just my friend because, in the Apache ways, they're not elders until they're 70. But he's my good friend, and I wanted to interview him and honor him and his wisdom about the seven generational prophecy and the language of love. And as many of you may know, I wrote a book on the seven generational prophecy called The Seventh Fire Turns to Water. And first and foremost, before I express more in depth with my own medicine, I want to honor my elders and what they share, because they have helped me pave the way and get in tune with my heart. And so younger people at this time can definitely use, and all people can definitely use some guidance on how to navigate this chaotic, sticky world that we're healing and transforming with. And if you want, you can also, Gabriel can, if you want, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
My name is Gabriel Garcia. My spirit Apache name is Bachu Tetla. My spirit name in Hawaiian and Polynesian is Iao. I'm affiliated with 4 different spiritual circles, and I don't mix them. They're all separate. Through my father, I'm Chihini Enda Apache. Through my mother, I'm Chiricahua Apache. And through my great-grandmother, Coahuila Apache. I was raised very traditional by my maternal grandma and grandpa. Both my grandpas were Apache, but they would not speak the language because at that time of our life, Apaches were treated worse than dogs. In the little town we lived in, there was probably 7, 8 different tribes in California. And they would have signs in certain businesses, no dogs or Indians allowed. With that being said, in meeting the younger people, they asked many questions. And I was given the privilege of learning. And like I explained to Sierra, as a child you kept quiet. You didn't interrupt. And I'll be 69 here in June. And if an elder's talking, I still do the same because I have a lot to learn. And in talking to Sierra, even though she's probably young enough to be my granddaughter, I see there's a generational gap sometimes. My children, my oldest will be 49 in July, and they learn that traditional way just to, after the adult speaking, you raise your hand to be polite, and that's how I've been raised, and that's how I raise my children. But the younger generation, we're not taught that, so I know it's difficult for them to learn that because sometimes they feel they don't have a voice, and I can understand that because there are 2 generations missing in most reservations. There's my mom and dad, their generation, my generation, and my offspring. Those 2 generations are missing within the reservation system. So it's my parents to the granddaughter. So there's a chasm there, and it's caused a lot of problems. Another thing that's caused a lot of problems within the reservation system is religion, and that's religion is very dogmatic. The way I was taught Apache way, we're not dogmatic. We respect everybody, but this is where Crazy Horse was given the vision of the 7 generations, because it's the privilege and responsibilities of us that know and were taught to teach the younger generation. But the younger generation, I find out, and people in their 40s and 50s, they educated themselves through the internet. They're watching Hollywood movies, interpretation of the Europeans, what an Apache's like. And what Hollywood portrays and what is in real life is no comparison. And in doing that, like the 7 generations, is an educational program to teach, first of all, to be patient, to be respectful, to be kind, And once we learn that, then the teaching will lead us. Even though we hear it, you can pray with the mouth, but the way I was taught, you pray by the way you walk. You walk your talk. And when we do ceremonies, I don't care what reservation, our dancing is the prayer. And if we have the privilege and we're sober, at least in a Apacheria, if you have alcohol in you, you cannot pray or sing in front of an elder or a holy man if they know you've been drinking. You're asked to be quiet, or you're asked to leave, because you have to serve the Creator in purity at that particular point of your life. And at that particular time during ceremony, you're on holy ground. So those things that a lot of the newer generation, they do not know about. There's a lot to learn. Being raised in it, it's to me been simple, but to the outsiders, it seems that it's a very harsh way to live, because obedience was optimum. If your elder spoke to you, like in the old days when there was a conflict with the Americans, you were only told to do a chore once. That's the way it was, and you were expected to carry that chore out. I was the same way. I knew both my great-grandmothers, and in doing that, you got to listen. You got to learn. And in this, again, in the seventh generation, it's perpetuating that information forward, the stories, the oral stories and traditions of our people. And I was taught and told, you do not add anything to it, but you do not take anything away. And in the teachings from Apache to Lakota, even though the female divine might have a different name, it's the same female divine. And I'll illustrate by this point, because a lot of natives today, I think it's a weakness. But when the buffalo calf woman was dressing at one point, there was two young men that were hunting. One was a spiritual young man, the other one was he was hung up with the flesh. So after 3 days of hunting, they came upon this woman that was undressed. And the young man with the thoughts approached this young woman. As he was approaching her, a white cloud came over her, and she was dressed in white. And when he approached her, he came with those thoughts to satisfy his flesh. So a cloud came over him. And when the cloud lifted, there was a pile of dead man's white bones. So it tells me as an Apache, the way I was raised, you guard your thoughts. My grandfather would say, the man that can control the mind can control anything. And your thoughts can cause harm to others, especially if your thoughts are vocalized and you weaken that person so they're believing what you have to say. It's black magic then. So there's a lot to talk about, so I'll let Sierra lead it.
You're great. You've answered a lot of the questions, but I guess in simple terms, and we could just go on with the questions I have here written. What does the seventh generational prophecy mean to you?
I know I've read the prophecies, but it's not where I put my faith, to be straight up. I've learned to I put my faith in the Hopi prophecy that's in the southwest. It's part of our region. They also have the turquoise, the coral, the six directions. As for the northern tribes, basically they're different, but they're all the same. So I'm not as familiar with the seven generations outside of what Crazy Horse said, that the reverence for the Mother Divine, the land. We don't walk on the land, we walk with the land. And that respect for the land, the water, the female, has been lost in contemporary times. And when I've been to Sundance several times in the Rosebud in Mission, and the way I was taught by the holy men there, that it's holy ground and you guard your thoughts, you guard what comes out of your mouth. And there's protocol, the way how to shake a blanket gently, and you don't throw the water down, you let it pour out of your glass, and you give mother a drink of water. And there's things in protocol that you have to be very careful. And in one particular Sundance in the cooler, I caught three young men, I'm talking young like in their 30s, talking about the wild weekend in Minnesota the weekend before, and I cut him off, and I reprimanded him, because in the old days, to them it was a shock. In the old days, by being so boisterous and irreverent to the Mother Divine, back then you would be punished severely, and sometimes even put to death. So when I turned around, I saw the holy man, the Sundance chief, and the third one was Hayoka, Camp Hayoka. And so they pulled me aside. They took me about 100 yards away, and I thought I was going to get chewed out, reprimanded by them, because I'm Apache, they're Lakota, they're Siganju and Oglala. So when they took me away, they started laughing. He says, Gabriel, do Apaches believe the same way as Lakota, the way you told that boy? I says, yeah, the way we were taught, and the way that I was taught about our elders and chiefs back then, they were very fun-loving people. But when it came to matters that were serious, yeah, sometimes it would cost you your life. And I've been told, and I've heard from Chief Victorio, when they would go down to Mexico for whatever reason, he would talk to his men. If anybody was caught drinking, and the reason it was so bad, because drinking changes the personality, and drinking loosens the tongue, those men were put to death immediately. So with that being said, you might call it harsh, but one thing it does, it keeps you loyal, keeps you focused on your mission in life. And the seventh generation talks about that. The seventh generation would be perhaps at her age or one younger, like my kids' age. You can dispute that. Like I said, I'm not an expert at it. But basically, where the whole world would be united as one, and we have one God, and even multicolored. That's what they explain the medicine wheel, because there's 6 colors rather than just the 4. So for me, I have a lot of reverence for Crazy Horse, for what he stood. I've read his biography written by a Siganju, Joseph Marshall, I believe it was called. So, is that it?
Shut up. Is that it? You know there's always more. Okay, I'm gonna I wasn't even gonna do this because I knew things were gonna come through and flow through, right? So I'm gonna touch on the way of silence and the way of listening, and like the why, maybe, like, just to give you, and maybe you could understand, right? So maybe the younger generation has a hard time listening to our elders because of the indoctrination in school, right? So we mix up how to respect and who to respect, because of course we don't respect the white man's society and the ways of war. And so maybe we forgot the obedience, the grace in obedience, and how, like, to go about obedience in a way that is equal. And I'm just curious, with that being said, just that, like, perspective and, insight of, like, what I feel is true, because I have a hard time taking we've had our discussions about, like, bumping heads of, listening, and how do I walk in this world as a young person, and then respect and honor what the elders have to say, but then see that there's so much change to be done, and not be able to say anything because my positionality in society is not of that ranking of being able to speak, and learning how to be a child as an ancient spirit in this body, right? It's like very humbling, for one, but the younger generation, we have a lot to say and to help change, with the 7th generational prophecy in hand. And how do you feel like we can mend the gap between the old and the young of the 7th generational prophecy? Because this 7th generational prophecy, or this 7th generation, is all of us who are alive at this time. It's not just, we are the younger grouping, and there is the gap, right, between understanding, and we tend to butt heads. So I'm just curious, like, as an elder, I just feel like, for me, my answer is compassion, of course, always, to bridge the gap. But as an elder, how do you feel like what we could do to love you better as younger people, and what can be reciprocated, and how equal energy exchange can be delivered?
Simply put, bring me a lemon meringue pie. In fact, Sierra brought up something interesting we've only known each other, 5 weeks now? I just got back from, I was in Mexico for over 4 months. And some people asked me to do a fire for them. They're Caucasian people, but they're good friends of mine. They have a beautiful, beautiful soul. Almost a couple of them have a native soul. So yes, I said I would, and I invited her to it. And this was pretty classic. And I didn't get angry with her. I could understand her angst because she was the last one to speak, round robin. And when I called on her and I said, last but not least, and she says, I have one question for you. Why is it that the elders don't allow the young ones to speak their mind? And I raised 4 children. You get nowhere by getting angry with a child. You lose the child's attention. She's a child. And I let her speak her mind so that I understood what she was talking about rather than assume. So when she spoke her mind, I illustrated to her the importance of listening. This is the way we were taught. And that I don't know about all elders, I don't know too many to shut people out. But there might be, I'm not going to say there isn't. Sometimes ego gets involved. But in a very loving way, I got to talk to Sierra. I wasn't angry about her and asking questions, no, because I got talked to a lot. My elders, uncles, my grandfather would say, son, you think too much about Creator. You don't have to think so hard. And I said the same thing to Sierra. The only way you're going to win young people over is to listen what they have to say and be tolerant and kind, because I was young once. Even though I was very different than my contemporaries, 180 degrees, I had a lot of questions. And sometimes my mother would tell me to shut up. She couldn't handle it. So with the younger generation, they ask you questions. You give them the information that they need, but you let them process it. It's something you have no control over because they have their own intellect, their way of processing things, and coming to their own informed choice on any given thing. So pretty much that's what I did with Sierra, and just guide her. And at the end of the first time we met, we're on top of the hill, and she started crying. And she realized that I loved her and that I was trying to help her. I wasn't there to shame her or make her feel bad, because we've all been through that. You know, it's no fun. So it's just being tolerant with one another, and just because somebody's young, you know, if you shut yourself off from their knowledge, then you're not doing your job as well. And I've let her share her opinions on matters, and when it needed to be corrected, and I explained why the correction was happening based on truth, the truth that we have been taught, not the conjecture of going to people that have half-informed information, and they piece it together to come up with this native teaching. And when she shared that, I could tell it was false. So I showed her and explained to her why it was false, so she could own it, and then she can teach others, rather than get all emotional about it. You're gonna lose. Yeah, dogma. There's no place in Indian country for dogma.
No, we got some more. We always got some more to talk about. What has Mother Earth been speaking to you about recently?
She's pissed.
Oh, wait. Oh, Mother Earth is. Yeah, I thought you meant me. You always give me a hard time because I'm mad. Yeah, she's pissed.
Yeah, she's like Crazy Horse. There's a song John Trudeau wrote many years about Crazy Horse. The Europeans don't know about spirituality, about this land, Turtle Island, and the sacredness it is to us as natives. And to them it's a commodity. They make women a commodity. They lost the sacredness of the female divine, instead of shrouding her in a veil of protection. Anymore, they're just like going to the grocery store. And that's not how we were taught. At least that's not how I was taught. And a lot of my elders that up in years, they validate all those teachings. And some of the younger ones are getting those teachings. But you have to take care of the earth. If like I was taught, if we went getting medicine here a couple of weeks back, anytime you take anything from the earth, there's two ways of doing it. If you have to uproot it, you leave tobacco. But if you have to cut the roots so it keeps going, you also leave tobacco. It's gratitude. And people forget to do that. And yeah, I'm conscientious even when I shave, I try to use enough water so I don't have to leave the water running. There's a lot of things that I was taught, and then I keep reminding myself, because water is very precious. And instead of, sometimes I don't normally smoke, but during ceremonies I smoke. I just don't throw my cigarette butt on the ground, because to me it shows respect for others, and it betrays my heart that I don't respect Mother. So just little things like that speak volumes. And the same respect you have for the earth, Mother, you show for the female divine, the life giver.
Thank you for that. Thank you for, being real, about her being pissed, because she's mad. And she's not all like loving and kind. Like she's a bear that is going to wake up, right? And we have to be ready for that, and allow like that fury to come and express the way it needs to. And I love, everything you share about just the respect, the main. How do you feel? So through the years of genocide and just through racism that runs rampant that can run rampant in our communities, and let's just be real, like there's so many organizations implanted on the res who are undercover with the government, right? And like there's just a lot of sick and twisted things that make it out that our tribes are being, looked at as something to assassinate still on low-key terms, but they don't want to say it like that, and they want to give you like food stamps and whatever, but the food that food stamps could buy, right, is like bullshit. Anyways, I don't want to get too much into it, but what could you tell the younger generations who are dealing with that anger of like the years of genocide in our blood that is boiling, that is still very present in the way that we interact? Because sometimes I see a white male and I'm like, yo, I want to throw blows with this homie right now, right? Like I want to fight him. So how do you feel like we could keep the peace between the races?
Genocide is a historical fact. That sunrise ceremony, Apache ceremony at White Mountain. There's 7 holy men there. We're all talking, and they asked me. There's a word in the Apacheria that talks about the Inda, I-N-D-E-H, is a non-Apache, the whites. But there's also Apache, a connotation of spawn of devils, something like that. And one of the elders was talking, and I said, I feel sorry for the white man. I got the attention of all the elders. Why do you feel sorry for the white man? I said, because they're ignorant. They have no culture. They have no blood tie with the earth. They don't have any way to represent themselves to the Creator one-on-one. They hire teachers to tickle the ears so they can hear what they want to hear, and it might not even be truth. So too, the elders kind of copped a resentment towards me. But we had to go to do the 4th round. In Apache, after you do a quarter, a sweat, you exit the sweat, you drink soda pop, water, talk for 15, 20 minutes, and you go back in. We came out for the 4th, after the 4th quarter. Those 2 elders said, Gabriel, as we prayed to spirit world,